Howdy, and welcome back to KSP Ironlocke. If you're hearing this, it means I actually completed the second episode, and didn't decide to quit after my editing software sent me back 3 days editing the last video. Let's get started. Last time, we started up the challenge and managed to scrape together 20 science in order to unlock Engineering 101 and Survivability. This is excellent. However, we still have a number of problems ahead of us. Firstly, we still lack any real form of rocket engine or liquid fuel tanks, and secondly, unlocking basic science now requires 45 science, 3 times what we previously collected at the VAB while rolling around. After a short cost-benefit analysis, I decided that it was best to get the 5 science now in order to unlock liquid fuel thrusters, and then continue working towards basic science. I had many choices of how to get this science, so I chose the easy one, and continued using the roller. Last episode, I mentioned it was possible to get some flying over mini-biome science doing this method, but I didn't remember how. While testing it here, I managed to crack the code for doing just that, by collecting science while rolling. This will help immensely going forward. And done! Nice, 6 science. Time to unlock basic rocketry. Cash isn't too tight at the moment, so we might as well unlock and buy everything here. So, really quick, the hammer is an interesting cost-saving tool we just unlocked. Its price tag is double the flea, however it contains more than double the solid fuel within each booster. Eager to test it out and attempting to escape the atmosphere, I slapped together a quick ship built atop the solid fuel booster with a set of science equipment and launched. Well, that didn't quite go to plan. The gains were indeed very good. However, having fallen short of my target altitude, I redesigned my ship and went at it again. Thanks to the parachute on the lower stage, I was also able to recover most of the cost of the launch. I'll have to try doing this with liquid fuel engines since those are far more expensive and definitely worth saving if possible. Getting back into the flow of things, I waited a couple days, didn't find any good contracts, waited a couple more days, did some basic groundwork contracts, and then got this one. I haven't unlocked the TT-38K yet, but this should let me use it for a couple launches. I should make the most of this opportunity. My plan is to use the temporary access to this radial decoupler in order to reach orbit with the assistance of 2 RT-10 hammers. After a quick construction process, I present the Orbiter Mark I. The Orbiter Mark II. Honestly, I'm kinda scared this thing's gonna flip upside down on launch. Sorry, Alto, you drew the short straw. And here we go. Orbiter has liftoff. By the way, for those wondering, while we can't see our apoapsis and periapsis node in the map screen, we can still get this information under the Maneuver Mode tab. This should help us make it to orbit and do some simple maneuvers. Checking in on our life support situation, looks like we've got a little shy of 2.5 hours in orbit before the power runs dry. I'm gonna have to keep this adventure short. Oh wow, we actually made it. Huh. Well, congratulations, Alto. You're officially the first Kerbal to have entered low Kerban orbit. Any words for the press? Well, thanks for the input. Unfortunately, you can't stay here long. 2 hours of life support and all. We've got 2 additional hours of survival when the power does go out, but I'd rather not push my luck. I tried to run some experiments, but apparently we did them last time we were here already. Alrighty, I think we've had enough. Let's head home. Just for fun, I activated the booster at the last second on decoupling, so it may or may not enter a parking orbit for us to retrieve these parts at a later time. We didn't really get close during this venture, but running out of electric charge is rapidly becoming my main concern here. Kerbals can really only survive for about 4 hours total until death in these capsules. That wouldn't usually be a problem, but if they aren't already suborbital when the power runs out at 2 hours, they're pretty much done for. That Orbit Kerban contract is finally complete, and we've got 2.9 free science. Alto's level 1, and we've almost recuperated the cost of that launch. I think I'll let Alto take a break for now. She's earned it. Alright, now that we're back, let's see what Mission Control has for us. Huh. No. Oh no. Give me 1 second. Can I just... Oh, you've got to be kidding me. So my choices are, miss out on this contract forever, or grab it knowing full well that with my current technology, none of my crew would survive the trek to the Mun. Alrighty, here's what I'll do. If I can scrape together the roughly 30 science I need to unlock probe cores within the next 4 in-game days, I'll do it. Alright, let's go. First things first, finish off the decoupler contract we still have. Next up, back in the roller. I'll try to really gather up whatever science I can find. .5 science, about a third of what I needed. Well, we're up to 23 total, which is over halfway there. I'll keep at it, I guess, but I'm starting to run out of biomes, I think. A quick stop to the island airfield got me another 1.7 science, too. In an act of desperation, I launched a craft to the nearby mountains in order to squeeze a little extra science out of that biome. My aim was, as some might describe, hilariously short. However, I still got 1.6 science from the endeavor, so I guess it was worth it. At this point, I was beginning to lose my mind. It was only 20 more science to go, but it felt like I'd already scraped the KSC's mini-biomes dry. Checking through the R&D archives, I tried to see if there was anything left for me here. And then, suddenly, a moment of inspiration struck. I had been to and collected data from space above Kerban, but not high above Kerban. While I'd previously gone suborbital, and indeed orbited around 75 kilometers above the surface, by traveling to any point above 250 kilometers above the surface, regardless of orbital pattern, I could earn myself an excellent additional chunk of boosted science. So I threw together the Orbiter Mark 1.5, threw Jod in the cockpit, and launched. Now that's what I'm talking about. 1.2 science from a single experiment. And 5.3 science. Nice. We're only about 13.5 science away. It's so tantalizingly close. Well, I guess it's nose to the grindstone again. $5.1 more science. Feels like we're inching closer. 8.4 to go. You know what? For no real reason, let's go to the North Pole. Ah, nuts. I'm just short. I think this is becoming a common theme. Well, that was a waste of funds for the 0 science gains. And we only have 4 hours to get enough science to take on this contract. Let me ponder my options. I guess I could try for the mountains with a solid fuel booster. Hey, that worked pretty well. 2.8 science earned, 5.5 to go. Time to do the same thing again, but this time I'm gonna aim for the Highlands biome. Another 2.8 science earned. We just need one last push of 2.8 science. Landing in one other biome should be sufficient. We'll be shooting for the deserts on the continent over the Western Sea. Hopefully these 2 solid fuel boosters will be sufficient. We'll be shooting for the deserts on the continent over the Western Sea. Hopefully these 3 solid fuel boosters will be sufficient. Hey, there we are. Perfect landing. If we overshot into the sea there, I was gonna cry. It's done. At long last. This felt like it took way longer than it did, but the rewards will prove to be well worth it. I raced to the R&D building, and, unlocking basic science, I blew half of my little money that remained on unlocking probe cores and batteries. I then went back and accepted the Mun exploration contract. However, even with the advance the contract provided, I was in no state financially to even consider this as an option right now. So I waited through a couple days and started doing groundwork again. And then I got 2 interesting contracts: science data from space around Kerban and surface temperature surveys. The temperature surveys are the less interesting of these 2. However, the pay is good, and we'll probably wind up doing a lot of these. Fed up with the poor performance of my old roller, I finally got around to designing the Roller Mark II, looking somewhat like a bootlegged variant of some piece of stolen intellectual property. It worked so well that in testing, it tore itself apart entirely and sent me back several thousand funds. Unperturbed, I redesigned my craft and tried again. Huh. 3rd time's the charm, I guess. That worked out pretty well. The Roller Mark III is definitely better than previous designs I've considered, and wouldn't you know it, the payout was pretty good too. Next up, science data from space around Kerban. This rapidly turned into a sort of goalpost for this episode. Regardless, it's an interesting one, but I'm not actually going to grab it just yet. Before that, I'm designing our first probe. We don't actually have solar panels yet, so I'm packing this thing with a ton of batteries, and it'll hibernate most of the time. If we can get this thing into low Kerban orbit, it'll produce us a good 30 to 40,000 funds over the course of its life before it finally runs out of juice. And there it goes. What a beautiful creature. I sure do hope nothing bad happens to it. Fortunately, my craft made it to space. However, I failed to make it into orbit, and it will be crashing down to the surface very soon here. Depressed by this shortly to occur event, I went back to farming cash contracts for a minute to clear my head. And with a little more extra cash on hand than I had earlier, I went ahead and unlocked the Science Junior. More science. Here we go. Alas, time was up. Tearfully, I went back to watch my probe burn up on re-entry. Farewell, my friend. But fate had other plans. The probe didn't burn upon re-entry, and after slamming into a hill at terminal velocity, the probe core survived, sped down a hill, and gently rolled into a lake. I think I'll let him rest here for now. He's more than earned it. Sweet dreams, my child. Anyways, while poking around in the tracking station, I noticed something in orbit. Sure enough, the booster I'd abandoned way earlier made it back into a stable orbit, and for some reason shut off with a little fuel remaining. I'll have to come back for this thing at some point. I waited a couple more days, did some groundwork, and then tried again to put a probe in orbit. And this once again didn't work. I then sat back to watch my work burn once again. Yeah, that's more so what I expected to happen. Amazingly, one of the engines survived. Neato. Well, back to contracts then. Wait. Are those wheels? Excuse me for 1 second.
No! I'm with the science team!
6.2 science from a brief run. Nice. I'm gonna start working towards general rocketry. Unlocking that will at least give us temporary access to the LV-909 Terrier engine, which we desperately need at this point. I love the way this thing can almost lean into turns using the onboard SAS system. I might try and make a rover like this for some other planets eventually. More science. Oh, only 6 to go. Ugh, these groundwork contracts are starting to get into my head. I'm gonna try getting to the South Pole for some more science. Yeesh, we were off to a rough start for a minute there. We got 2.7 science, and I saw another 2.3 in the upper atmosphere. I'm gonna go for it. Well done, Gertrude. We're so close. 1.1 science to go. Fortunately, I think I missed a Science Junior report at the tracking station. Let's roll there now. Boom. 20 science. That wasn't, too painful. Let's get that research. Bam. General rocketry. I went ahead and unlocked the FL-T200 just because it's useful to have. And now, it's just a roll of the dice away, and we'll have an LV-909 Terrier in our clutches. We're a bit tight on funds again, so I'll do some more groundwork. Oh, as a quick note for the test contracts relating to the LV-45 Swivel and I think the Reliant engine, I'm trying to avoid them, as from prior experience there's a 50-50 chance they'll immediately fail. From what I've seen, this is because the contracts utilizing this part will sometimes pull from an old defunct version of the part that is no longer really accessible. I tried to go suborbital while also grabbing some high altitude science, but we didn't make it high enough. And then the Science Junior burned up. Amazing. Well, that was a bust. I'll just recuperate some of the cash I lost, I guess. Suddenly, I got this contract, granting me temporary access to the BACC Thumper. This might be it. This might be what I need to get into orbit. I redesigned my probe. Didn't have any real nose cones, but an empty capsule would be aerodynamic enough. Probably give some SAS control too. And launch. Howdy folks, quick pause here for a second. Some of you might have noticed that at this moment, I began to form an orbit traveling in the western direction. In my defense, the launch was off to a shaky start and I was just rolling with the punches. But this is very bad. Why, you ask? Well, the answer is simple. Kerban is a sphere. But more importantly, it spins. Kerban has a diameter of about 1,200 kilometers, or a circumference around the equator of 3,770 kilometers. Given that Kerban experiences a full day every 6 hours, we can calculate that, at the equator, the surface itself is traveling at about 0.174 kilometers per second, or 174 meters per second. This is known as sidereal rotational velocity, and any object residing on the surface of the planet inherits this velocity even while sitting quote-unquote still. In the end, this means that attempting to orbit against the planet's spin, even with a proper ascent profile, costs an extra 174 meters per second of delta V, just in fighting to cancel out the sidereal rotational velocity. Anyways, back to it, I guess. Anguish. That was the only word that came to mind. I was so close. So tantalizingly close. Just 10 or 20 more meters per second would have been enough. If it hadn't been for that ComNet blackout on my ascent, it probably would have been enough too. Hoping to squeeze 1 or 2 orbital science scans out of it, I returned to the KSC to do some miscellaneous groundwork to free up some contract slots. Oh, and because I decided I like it, I also went ahead and unlocked the Thumper. And then something strange occurred. Looking at my probe in the tracking station, I realized that despite clearly dipping down into the atmosphere at 61,000 meters, the game seemed perfectly content to let my probe keep its orbit. So, yay? I think? I'm still not satisfied with this nonetheless, as I want a real probe in LKO, but I'll use this guy for any space science contracts that pop up. After this event, things seemed to get a lot better. As with the ease I could accomplish some of these contracts now, my cash situation became a lot less tight. Or at least it was for several minutes, until I took what I thought was a lucrative contract, which after 2 failures cost me over 8,000 funds in blown-up hitchhiker storage containers, which have the impact tolerance of a wet, burning roll of paper towels. Back to groundwork. Okay, this is driving me insane. I keep shuffling and doing ground contracts, but still nothing has popped up for the Terrier. I'm gonna start skipping most of the smaller contracts, and only do the lucrative ones until I can find it. Oh. That was easy. Introducing the LV-909 Terrier. Efficient, reliable, affordable, and generally all-around amazing early-game orbital engine. Compared to the LV-T45 swivel we've been using up until this point, the Terrier only costs a fraction of the price, and has a vacuum ISP of 345 compared to the 320 of the swivel. This is an almost 8% increase in fuel efficiency, atop the nearly 1 ton of free weight savings. Anyways, enough gawking. Time to put this puppy to work. I began the task of restructuring the Mark II variant of my probe, swapping out the old engine with the Terrier, and having removed 2 of the fuel tanks, the craft still gained almost 700 meters per second of delta V. I ripped off 1 more fuel tank just to help the solid fuel booster during the lower part of the launch, removed some excess dead weight, and slapped on some extra fins for added stability. For 6k funds, this is going to be quite the effective vessel. Time to go. At long last, it's done, and with a comfortable 600 meters per second of delta V left over too. I'm satisfied for now, and I think it's getting close to time to start wrapping things up. However, now that I've got the Terraria engine, I'm feeling confident to push my luck. Time to get rid of this contract that's been holding me back a bit. Well, we made it into orbit, but yeah, my Delta V situation isn't looking that hot. Well, another probe in orbit. I'll call that a partial success, and I think I'm gonna call it here. We had some bumps along the way, but things are starting to take shape. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. This has been Ironlocke, signing off.